Welcome. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kim Robe, and I'll be your worship associate this morning. Welcome to a very special homegrown service brought to you by our resident historians, Grant Wilson and Jamie Robe. Now, Jamie and Grant are practiced at this. They have a podcast called A Drive About Tampa Bay. So ask them about their podcast, because I know they'd love to talk to you about it. So they're going to be taking us through some history of the area. For some of you, this will be familiar, in our UUCT community in particular. For others of us, it will be all new, and some of us in between. But I think we're all really going to enjoy learning more. And it may even help inform us about where we want to go in the future. And now, if you haven't already, please silence your cell phones and get ready to come into a time of community made sacred by your presence. All right, now we have some very special opening words, and I will step aside and let Janine DeMora share them with us now.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Janine. I know some of you might have seen me. I've been here for a couple months now, and it's become a very special place. I'm happy to be a member. I also, a couple weeks ago, took a position as the communications chair, so thank you. If any of you have any questions about websites, social media, ideas, please come to me. I'm taking down a bunch of notes, and I have a beautiful vision for how I want to help see this place grow in a new generation. So thank you guys for having me up here. James, I'm set to start. You do not need to be afraid here. Here is a place we believe the best of intentions. Here is a place we are free to be ourselves, ask the hard questions, contemplate our purpose, feel joy, feel sorrow, breathe in peace, and exhale worries. Here is a place we are free, safe, and sound. Here is a place for the soul, body, and mind to be nourished, comforted, soothed, and inspired. Our creencia. The light shines, the wind blows, the trees hold strong, the birds chirp, the insects fly, interconnected. Here is a place we are all one, with respect for another's place and being in this world in our hearts. Under the dome, we are home. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Janine. I'd like to light our chalice now with these words. We kindle our chalice, a bowl of light, reflecting that eternal light which shines always within us and around us. Well, it's now time for our stone ritual. There are 3 bowls here in the sanctuary, one right here up front, one towards the back by the kitchen, and one upstairs. The invitation is to come forward and place a stone for a joy, a stone for a sorrow, and a stone for an intention for the upcoming week. And you're invited to come forward now.
Well, Jamie, here goes. We have done this this podcast now for a couple of years, but we go 6 months at a time and forget about it. And we're usually out somewhere in Tampa, around Tampa, fiddling around, looking at each other and making stuff up as we go. And a lot of the history is shaky.
And I just sit and listen to him the whole time now.
And we've tried to put our experiences into the history as well. So here goes.
All right. Well, and we're actually recording our podcast right now, so we're using the media again. But we started this a while back, and
It's been 2 or 3 years.
yeah. And we just recorded one. We'll talk about one of the places where we just recorded our podcast a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
But we're going to start. One way to look at this, how does this fit in with spirituality and everything? And I think I really go by the 7 principles. I think that's really the rock that our church is built on. And the 7th principle is the interconnected web of all existence, and which I always think is a green ecology kind of thing, how we're all connected. But really, we're talking about connection through time. So we're going to take you through imagine a spiral. I know Doak is up there. Hey, Doak. He loves spirals. He's got a spiral tattoo, I think, and everything. But we're going to go from this campus, and we're going to radiate out a little ways around, but not too far, like a few miles. So it's amazing how much stuff happens right in this area.
Yeah, and the first, if you'll imagine the small dome from the sky looking down, that's ground zero from what we're talking about. And this church started down in South Tampa, in the Inner Bay area. There was an old closed-down Episcopal church that became on Concordia, that became the UU Church down there. And in '73, they moved up here, bought the land, and in '74, they decided they wanted a church, a building, and so they ordered a kit of all things. And it was shipped here from California by train.
I just imagine all the people with peace signs and stuff, with flowers in their hair, like San Francisco. But there are people here that went to church in that small dome. So if you were here at that time, raise your hand. Look at that, see?
These are small domes. These people were going here, and from what we're told, they met in it while it was actually being constructed, and you all took part in throwing the mud up on that thing. And you can sometimes see fingerprints. If you'll go over there and look closely, you'll see hand and fingerprints where they threw the concrete onto it.
And I know from what Trevor's had to do and other people to try to keep it from leaking. So let's give them a round of applause for the building people and all that, 'cause I don't think the people that built it knew, how to do that in the long haul, but it's still there. So,
Well, I showed up around 89, and we were, it had just been a month or two since they had moved into the dome, the sanctuary dome. And from what we're told, Reverend Mike, the minister then, had everybody after the service pick up their chairs, and was a processional over into, I'm seeing some head shake, and they brought the chairs in and sat them down, and that was how this sanctuary dome was christened, I guess you'd say.
So we're going to start radiating out a little ways from the dome, but I don't know how many of you gone to Lettuce Lake Park or down at the Hillsborough River and things.
Tononasassa.
Yeah, Lake Tononasassa is right over in this area. So we're going to go further. We're going to jump further back in time, because one thing that's really cool to me is that there were people here, 10,000 years ago and stuff. So it's impossible. I wrote down some of the names of the different, tribes and groups that were here. There's some of them you can say them better than
The original were the Tocobagas.
Yeah.
And they've been tracked back.
Yeah, hold the mic.
Excuse me, the Tocobaga Indians, and they were here as far back as 10,000 years ago.
There were lots of other ones too, and
Yeah.
one of the things over at Lettuce Lake Park, I'll just tell you, because we always try to relate everything to our experience. So I wasn't here 10,000 years ago, but Kim, my wife, over here, this worship associate, let's hear it for her, because she did a great job. But we were at Lettuce Lake Park with one of our daughters for Learning Gate. We had a field trip, and they were showing us in the classroom all these ancient scrapers and different, arrowheads and stuff. There were people living there, fishing in that beautiful Lettuce Lake area. And we went out of the thing to go on the boardwalk and field trip. And as we're walking, I looked down, and I've been there a million times, but I looked down, and there was this white thing on the ground. I picked it up, and it was a scraper. And I showed it to the teacher, and the teacher was like, oh my gosh, we have to send this to Tallahassee and all this other stuff. And I was like, okay. But, ever since then, I've been looking on the ground, and I never see another one. But
In the mid-'70s, I took an archaeology course at USF, and they took the class out to Tanonasassa, the southeast section. I think it's called Brooker Creek, and there's a public boat ramp there now. At any rate, there, very near there was an agatized coral pit that the early Indians, first the Tocobagas and then the Seminole Creeks, and they actually made arrowheads, spear points, and so we walked along that shore. The teacher took us out there, and I found maybe a half a dozen arrowheads and one spear point about that long. And then over the decades, there was a public beach, privately owned, at Tanonasassa Road on the south end of Tanonasassa. And I would walk along there, and people were swimming and not paying any attention. And I found arrowheads there. So they're all over. There have been 13 documented sites of various tribes over the thousands of years.
And during that time, the prehistory era, there were mastodons, which are like mammoths, with the big tusks. I don't know has anybody ever seen any of those tusks that they pull out of the river? It's pretty amazing. At the Temple Terrace Library, we went to a thing a few years back, and there was a diver, and literally right off from Temple Terrace there, they dive down, and sometimes the tusks will just be sitting completely open on the bottom, and they're huge. They're the real deal.
And if any of you have ever been over here to Pasco County, Polk County, the phosphate pits have huge. There are museums over there with huge bones. This whole area of 45,000 years ago, millions of years ago, actually. By the way, I just saw yesterday they're getting DNA from mastodons that died 30 and 40,000 years ago. So, at any rate,
we could have a pet one here someday, right, or something. I don't know. Well, it's amazing to think that there were animals walking through this very spot we're at. I mean, eating and doing their thing or whatever. So
let's move forward just a little bit to the 1800s. In 1835, the Second Seminole War started, and so they took a group of 107 soldiers from Fort Brooke, where the Fort Brooke garage is downtown?
That's downtown Tampa.
Very close to there was the Fort Brooke, and Major Dade marched up 109 miles up toward Ocala, which was, what was the name of it?
Well, they were going to,
King.
Yeah, they were going on the King's Highway, which is, if you want to go on the King's Highway today, part of it is 301. So when you're going like past Hillsborough River State Park, there's actually a fort that they reproduced there because that's where they crossed over. I think they stayed there the first night. They walked right past, very close to our building, going past Lake Tanonasassa, and they marched up, and it was like one of the worst massacres in Army history because they got past the Hillsborough River, and then they went further up, and the Seminoles attacked them and just wiped out the entire group, except...
Let's see, 105 got killed, and 3 survived.
Yeah, and they crawled, one guy crawled, I know he crawled back all the way from, which is essentially around Dade City, crawled all the way back on that highway through the bushes and stuff, and he got back to Fort Brooke, and then they realized, they had been wiped out. But, the Seminoles never got really defeated. So, because they kept falling back into the swamps. You think of the Everglades, but really, if you go, Hillsborough River comes out of a swamp, and the Alafaya, what's the river up there? Withlacoochee. Yeah, the Withlacoochee goes kind of northwest, and they both flow out of the same swamps. So there's like impenetrable areas there for the U.S. military anyway.
Jamie, while you were working a couple of weeks ago, and I forgot to tell you, Diana, I went out and started seeing how much of the old Fort Brooke Highway I could find. And at 40th Street, where East Lake Avenue begins winding through the Garden of Memory Cemetery, it goes kind of diagonal. Then it goes over to where 50th Street and 56th Street go diagonal. And then Harney Road cuts off from it and moves around and crosses Hillsborough Avenue, goes by Tampa Bay Tech, and then about Fowler Avenue, it starts northeast again, and it goes just south of our campus here, crosses 301, and starts northeast again, becomes Taylor Road / Fort King Highway.
And
it goes all the way up to Knights Griffin Road.
I think Grant hit on something. If you're drive around, like we drive around and we'll look at old parts of Tampa.
Yeah.
And, you see these rundown buildings and stuff, and you realize, oh, that was somebody's business, that was somebody's house. But these diagonal roads through Tampa are almost all some sort of really old, sometimes Native American trails, because they didn't go north and south, east, west. They just went, oh, that's the shortest way to, the lake or the whatever. So we did skip over a little bit of, the Spanish came through. And if you've ever been to River Hills Park in Temple Terrace, there's some crosses in there. And that's because the Spanish came up and were pulling pine trees out. There's been a tremendous amount of logging all through this area. Like if you go to Lettuce Lake Park, there's like 3 or 4 really giant cypress trees, and they're only there because they're hollow, and they're like 1,000 years old, maybe 2,000 years old, or who knows. But they didn't cut down the hollow ones because they weren't worth anything, but they cut down giant trees everywhere.
I forgot, there was an old a lumber railroad, narrow gauge, and it started over east of the Hillsborough River and crosses right there where White Way and River Hills, that park that nobody can get to. Well, that was a raised railroad bed, came across White Way, went diagonally around behind the family recreation center, goes all the way across to the Truist Bank, and any of you know where Saigon Bay Restaurant is? Right across there was a railroad, and it went all the way down and beside the Pepsi and Schlitz plant. Any rate, that was a forest products railroad for a long time.
And we're a railroad city, a railroad town, really, you see the plant. How many people have been to the Plant Hotel, which is University of Tampa? You should go during the Christmas time because they have incredible Victorian Christmas thing inside. But the Henry Plant was a railroad baron on the West Coast, and then Flagler, who created St. Augustine and went down all the way to the Keys, he was on the East Coast, so they kind of raced. But there's a story about Tampa got the railroad and the Plant Hotel. He really wanted to go into Cedar Key, which if you go to Cedar Key, anybody been to Cedar Key up north of us? It's worth the trip up there. It's kind of old Florida, still some old Florida in there, but that would have been Tampa, but they had bought all the railroad rights right up close, and then the last mile to the port or whatever, they held out. So Henry Plant said, pigs will root in your street before I pay that money, and then he went to Tampa. So,
We need to get back to the immediate area.
yes.
Why don't we do Temple Terrace now?
Okay.
In 1911, Bertha Palmer, and by the way, the history books name her husband, but he had died. They were financiers from Chicago. She moved down to Sarasota, and she bought some hunting ground up here.
6,000 acres.
6,000 acres, yeah. And but by 1918, she died. And so there is 4 developers
Right.
bought that 6,000 acres.
Yeah, they created 2 different entities, and one was called Temple Terraces,
Yeah.
and that ended up being Temple Terrace. And you want to tell about the orange grove?
Well, the second corporation that they formed was the Temple Orange Company, and it was 5,000 acres of Temple oranges they planted out here. They said it was the biggest grove in the world, and they finished it in about 1922, and guess what happened in 1927? The big freeze killed most of the trees. However, any of you living around Temple Terrace, if you've got one of these really old, really sour trees, that thing could be 100 years old that was planted in the 20s. What happened when you built your house?
Yeah, we built our house in Temple Terrace 25 years ago, and 30 years ago, okay. See, you're really getting history. But when the lot had never been developed, and people didn't even know it was a lot, honestly, and we had to get zoning and everything. It's right by Bonnie Brae Park. And the land we were able to preserve one tree, but there was an old orange tree in the center, and it had these really gnarly looking oranges and stuff. And I still feel bad we had to cut that down, but that was right where our house sat. So that orange grove went all the way north, like where USF, and the whole thing was oranges. So you can see old pictures of that.
By the way,
Oh, there it is, right there.
2 of the developers was Maud Fowler and Collins Gillette. I'll bet you can figure out where some roads came from. And a little later on, you'll see an early Fowler Avenue, but we need to probably move on. Well, oh no, one more thing. The Club Morocco was built beside the
Hold your
country
microphone
club. Was built beside the country club, the Club Morocco. And after the company went broke, after the Big Depression, the city of Temple Terrace used that casino as the city hall until 1949. I see Cap shaking his head, yeah. Those of you that were around then, that was a
Well, not only were
City
the
Hall.
brainiacs that did the orange grove that froze, then like the next year was the great crash, stock market crash and depression. And I know Temple Terrace had to be bailed out by the residents, so it was bought by the residents and helped out. So, but let's, we're going to jump.
Can I do
Yeah,
one
well,
thing?
hurry.
1944, Florida College bought the old clubhouse and started Florida Christian College. And I was still kind of religious way back in the day, Southern Baptist. And so it was a big deal when in 1949, Billy Graham, who was a student there, on the 18th hole decided that the Lord told him he could be a, what do they call those preachers? Evangelist, yeah. I've been away for too long.
I thought you weren't drinking with him. That's when he decided he was going to do it.
Yeah. At any rate, and one other thing, Dr. Charles Campbell in 1929 built a bat house on the Hillsborough River because the mosquitoes were driving the residents here nuts. and it lasted until 1979, when they think some teens got in it and smoked and burned it down.
Well, one of the things was that'll start leading us towards students. You know, we have USF right over here, and maybe you wonder why USF is here, and even Busch Gardens and things. But after all of the Orange Grove debacle and all that stuff, there was nothing going on around. But then World War II happened, and Tampa had 3 air bases, you know, for training. There was what's now MacDill, where the Tampa International Airport is. That was Drew Field, and then this one up here was Henderson
Army Airfield. Yeah. By the way, the road that connected MacDill to the one, you know, over by the Tampa Airport, and then Henderson, was called Vera Road until they renamed it after a colonel at MacDill, and became Dale Mabry Highway.
Yeah. So you think about it, there was like not a lot out here, but there were bombers flying over here every single day. Yeah. Go back to that last one if you can. That's the aerial.
Oh, that's USF. We didn't get to the other one.
Yeah. This is the air base.
Right.
So we're looking towards the bottom would be where Bush Boulevard is, and then somewhere halfway up or something would be, further up would be where Fowler Avenue is. So we actually went to Mel's Hot Dog. Anybody been to Mel's Hot Dogs? Okay, that's been there forever. They do have vegetarian hot dogs too, so. But that's the last remaining building from this air base that still exists. So the guy bought that old decrepit building, and he's still there making us a lot of money. But
that, you'll see the road going up to the center, where it's sort of like an A. That is 50th Street and McKinley Drive. And the military base was only from 43 to 45. They trained bomber pilots and anti-submarine crews because they were afraid that the Nazis were bringing submarines. And guess what they were? All around the area.
So our campus is just to the northeast, well, actually more like to the east of this complex. So you would have heard bombers flying over here during World War II for sure. And then later, we're gonna have to accelerate the time machine here a little bit, but later, you want to tell about how USF got formed?
Well, it was a civilian, Henderson was a civilian airport for 10 years from 45 to 55. And then a national U.S. representative, Sam Gibbons, he started talking to Governor Leroy Collins and friends in the Florida legislature, and they decided that they needed a state university. And so he talked the military into giving 1,700 acres to form a state university. So a bill 1007, House bill, actually created the University of South Florida.
80 words, right?
Huh?
It was 80 words long.
It was 80 words long. Sam Gibbons actually wrote it and handed it to the legislature. And well, they were happy over it. At any rate, in 55 then, they formed a committee, hired the president, and they rented a house down at the northern foot of Davis Island Bridge in Hyde Park. And they, for 4 years, they created the University of South Florida while they were building the campus.
And
now campus will show up.
right, one of the things with there was Fowler Avenue. Like Grant remembers coming out to this area, and it was like really the country. And I kind of remember that too. But Fowler, now it's 6 lanes wide and everything else.
See at the top, those 2 lanes, that's Collins Drive, going from Fowler Avenue at the top to the administration building.
So to get here, you would have gone down like what is it, dirt road, but I think it was paved at that.
Can you go one more? There's Fowler Avenue in 1958.
Yeah.
I tried getting a DeSoto out there to drag race it. My parents didn't know. And I almost got stuck. You had to go about 40 miles an hour to keep from being bogged down in that sand.
Now, Fowler was the lady that was the first vice mayor of Temple Terrace.
Yeah, Maud Fowler. By the
And
way,
then-
she was 6 feet tall.
Oh, wow, 6 feet tall. Her son was Cody Fowler, and do we have any lawyers here? I know we have one up there. Cody Fowler was the first Floridian lawyer to be president of the American Bar Association.
Yeah.
And he was a civil rights lawyer. This is way back. And they say he was just like Atticus Finch, you know, and he defended African Americans, and that was like, you know, they had all these terrible laws here and stuff, even up to more modern times, but he fought for these rights. So that's kind of cool that right here, Fowler, you know, think about these people that actually were named after. And then one other thing, I know in Fowler, when there's a picture, I don't think we have it, but there's a picture right at Fowler Avenue where the entrance to USF, and during the Vietnam War, all of the students came out and they had a protest, and there's like pictures of the police with tear gas. It looks like Kent State or something like that. I mean, it's amazing. So there's a lot of cool activism and rights and things going on right around us now.
We've
So
got,
yes,
your wife just told me we have to cut this thing
you
short.
got a
At any
prompt.
rate, I dug through my mess and found out that I am a charter member of USF, but I didn't go for 6 years.
Woo, dropped out. No, dropped back in,
I
right?
ended up going to the Navy and didn't think I got accepted. And when I got there, they said, "Where in the hell you been for the last 6 years?" And they gave me a medallion. I'm a charter member, and my student number was 5214.
Wow.
And you've got a brick you're going to
Yeah, why did I have a brick? I had to make Kim go get this brick from her backyard. But I was, talk about weird stuff. I was digging down, putting a little fish pond, a decorative fish pond thing, and I worked so hard for like weeks and weeks, and I got down and I was doing the last bit, and there was so much weird stuff, you know, rocks and stuff you hit, and I hit something, and I dug down and I pulled this brick, and it was really heavy, and I did some research on it, but it's one of the 1890 bricks that were brought in for the streets, you know, around the Plant Hotel. If you go there, all those streets are brick, and a lot of streets in Tampa are still brick, but everything was brick back then. But the thing is, these bricks were actually ballast on ships, and they would come in with the bricks and then dump all the thousands of bricks, and then they would bring on cargo from here.
And guess where they threw the bricks overboard? At Ballast Point
Yeah.
in southern Tampa. Yeah,
Oh, I know we're so hopelessly late here, but
we got to do this.
yes,
here.
the one thing about Ballast Point, it's actually a tie-in with the space age, which I always think this is cool. If you know, from the Earth to the Moon was famous. That's Jules Verne.
Jules Verne, yeah.
Yeah, and he launched. If you read that book, he launched 3 astronauts on the Columbiad, the capsule, which was shot out of a cannon that was actually located at Ballast Point. And it took them 3 days to get to the moon. Now, in real life, you know, we're almost the same, you know, parallel over to Cape Kennedy. And when they were doing the space, and they shot 3 astronauts in the Columbia Apollo capsule to the moon. It took 3 days to get there. And Tampa at one point was going to be mission control, like it's in Houston, but that was politics, got it moved there because they could have Tampa was a great location for that technology, and it was close enough to the Cape, but they ended up moving it. But it's pretty amazing how time and sci-fi and history all wrap together.
As you can tell, Jamie and I roam around town and make stuff up and do this sort of thing. So we're going to have to spare you all. So we're going to give it.
Oh, you can listen to our
wait a minute.
podcast,
What was
too.
that? There was one other photo there.
I'm going to go to the music, Grant.
That is Collins Drive going from Fowler Avenue north toward the administration building at USF, 1958. That was just published 2 weeks ago in La Gazzetta.
Thank you, everybody.
Anyway, so we're finished now, guys. Thank you.
Okay, well, I don't know that there are many people who could take you from prehistoric times to the present in under 30 minutes. Very enjoyable. We loved it. That was great. And I so enjoyed hearing all your stories, and I hope it will be a springboard for more stories. We all have them, and it's great to share them. Well, I'd like to close our service with these words from Arthur Graham. Each of us is an artist whose task it is to shape life into some semblance of the pattern we dream about. The molding is not of self alone, but of shared tomorrows and times we shall never see. So let us be about our tasks. The materials are very precious and perishable.